Do you guys have coats, winter parkas? Not you wear like a North Face thing and you wear a sweatshirt and you think it's a coat.
It has a zipper.
It has a zipper.
If it has a zipper, it's a coat.
That could be a meme, right? If it has a zipper, it's a coat. That could be on the internet.
I'm terrified.
We're going to Minnesota this weekend to cover Ohio State at Minnesota for a noon kickoff, 11 local time in Minnesota on Saturday. Bill, you are an expert on Minnesota Golden Gophers football. Break down the 15 best players on their roster.
Pass.
All right. Tell us what you do know. What's the deal? What's the deal with Ohio State this week? Listen, Minnesota is it 7 wins? Minnesota is 7-2. Urban Meyer had some very good things to say about Jerry Kill on Monday. Jerry Kill is a guy that's won at every level. That's a thing that Urban Meyer said has impressed him. Jerry Kill is doing some good things at Minnesota. What is this game going to be like for Ohio State, though?
Here's the thing with Minnesota. They run the football. That's what they do. I think they're 120-something in the nation in passing. They rely solely on running the football. And their running back's pretty good. David Cobb is one of the best running backs in the country. Ohio State gave up 130 yards, I think, to Jeremy Langford in the Michigan State game. I don't know if Minnesota's offensive line is as good as Michigan State's, and I don't know if David Cobb is as talented as Jeremy Langford. Cobb's numbers are better, but Langford might be a better player. I don't know. But I think the fact that they gave up some rushing yards against Michigan State and are now facing a team that loves to run the football and it's their bread and butter, I think that it has to be cause for concern, maybe not cause for concern, but certainly the area of emphasis on what Ohio State should be focusing on this week. Because if Minnesota can run the ball, anything can happen.
The one thing is that I think a big thing in the Big Ten this year has been the rushing attacks and the star running backs. And there seems like there have been 4 guys all year that have been in the top 5 or 10 in the NCAA in rushing, and people have been talking about. Amir Abdullah from Nebraska, Ohio State hasn't played him. Melvin Gordon from Wisconsin, Ohio State hasn't played him. David Cobb from Minnesota, they get him next. And Tevin Coleman from Indiana, they get him the next week. So this has been this thing where there are some really good backs in this league. And Ohio State hasn't experienced that at all. And so in terms of getting a test for this defense and running the ball, Jeremy Langford did have some success. That is something that is coming on Saturday. One thing we don't like to do here is play the wary game and pretend that Ohio State should be wary of teams just because they're on the schedule. Minnesota's 7-2. Ohio State's coming off a big win. I'm not going to say the phrase that people want to use for games like this. What do you think Ohio State's thinking about, or what do you think this is going to be like on Saturday?
Is there transitive property in college football?
There, to some extent, you know what? People make fun of the transitive property. Yeah. I think it exists to some degree.
Did Minnesota lose to Illinois?
That is. Yeah. Bill says yes.
Is Illinois a football team?
We did not get a lot of proof of that when they played Ohio State, no.
So Minnesota lost to a team in football that doesn't play football. I am being really harsh. And
you are.
A team that has 7 wins and a team that did just score 50 points on an Iowa team that's supposed to be gritty. And it's home and it's going to be cold. And Ohio State loses the day. I thought that was interesting. I don't think about things like that. But they did play at night, and it is a noon game, and there's a time difference. They lose a day of preparation. I guess if you add all the mystical things that could add up to being, I'm not going to say the word, there is a chance that maybe Ohio State could be in for a game. And plus, they haven't come off an emotional win like that once under Urban Meyer, so we don't necessarily know how they're going to react. Ohio State had the biggest win in the history of the Meyer era on Saturday, but maybe if you add all that stuff together, Ohio State wins by 14 instead of 30. I just don't see... The spread's 14.5. I think that's a very reasonable, fair spread. I just do not believe in my mind that we're going to start playing this game of should Ohio State be worried about an opponent that's clearly inferior.
The phrase that we're not saying, it's TG is the thing that we're not saying, just so people aren't confused. The one thing is the Penn State game, when we came here after the Penn State game and we were going to kick all of ourselves out of the video, that was not a great team. Penn State's lost to some not very good teams also this year, and they almost beat Ohio State, and that was on the road, and this is going to be on the road. So, Ohio State's going to say all the right things. The coaches and players are going to try to make sure they have an edge for this game. The thing that could be the only thing, I think, is if somehow the Minnesota offense truly is as good as the Penn State defense turned out to be. That Penn State stayed in that game against Ohio State because of one side of the ball, basically. And Ohio State made some huge mistakes. J.T. Barrett made probably the two worst throws he's made since the Virginia Tech game, and the 2 picks in that game that helped swing that game. So, coming off a game like this where the offense looks so good, is J.T. Barrett going to make huge mistakes like that?
I just want to say something, too. I don't remember what game it was, but one of Ohio State's opponents earlier on in the year ran the ball really well. I don't think it's Navy because Navy runs a crazy system. But there was another one that ran the ball extremely well and was last in passing. And to me, the thing that you should be worried about if you're Ohio State facing Minnesota is the fact they run the ball so well. We've just mentioned that. But can they run the ball that well against Ohio State's defense if they have a non-existent passing game? And sometimes I feel like lopsided stats are misleading because, they run the ball really well because it's the only thing they know how to do.
Right.
So can they run for 300 yards against Ohio State's defense not throwing it? I don't think so. I think that's yeah.
No, I know what you're saying. The other thing is Minnesota, I think, has wins over 2 teams that have winning records this year, Middle Tennessee and Iowa. Yeah. Their Big Ten wins are against Purdue, Michigan, and Northwestern, and then the Iowa game. And the other thing is, Ohio State now is in the conversation with teams like TCU. We're talking about them with the playoff at that level, one-loss teams trying to get to the postseason. Minnesota lost to TCU 30-7. So, we're talking about Ohio State, Minnesota right now because that's what matters. But when they played a team that's perceived to be at Ohio State's level, Minnesota wasn't competitive.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the TG, I think there has to be something to look forward to on the other side of that, too. I know they're coming off a big emotional win, and I think the TG can be a real thing sometimes. But I think there has to be something on the other side to look forward to. And I don't think Ohio State is looking ahead to Indiana. And I know the Michigan game's a huge deal, but Michigan is not good this year, and I don't think they'll be looking ahead to that. And I don't think they're looking 4 weeks down the road at a potential Big Ten championship game. So I think it's overhyped a bit that they're going to overlook this Minnesota team for whatever reason. I just think Ohio State is better, and the weather, it's going to be cold. These guys have played in cold weather before. I just don't think any of that stuff outside of the football field is going to be as big of an issue as people think it's going to be.
Every time you guys say TG, I just think of Torrance Gibson.
You wrote 9 stories on him last week.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the deal. If we're wrong, you can play this video back to us next week. But in the meantime, we're not going to pretend that we think this is going to be a competitive game, that Ohio State has a lot to worry about. We think Ohio State is playing pretty good football. We think they won their game of the year against Michigan State. Somebody has to win Big Ten games. That's the thing. When you play Purdue and Northwestern and Michigan, somebody has to win. So somebody gets some wins, and then if somebody gets 3 of them, then all of a sudden they're 7-2, and people look at them as a good team, and I don't know if that's actually the case. So Doug Lesmerises here with Bill Landis and Ari Wasserman outside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Continue following with us all week as we lead up to Ohio State at Minnesota on Saturday at noon. Thanks for watching on cleveland.com.